Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain and welcome back. I'm going to put my notes down before I flash them and throw them around in the screen again. But last week we were talking about things like, or the last few weeks in fact, last couple of weeks, we've been talking about things like interviews and getting into a job and things to first do when you get into a job, especially if it's a leadership or role of responsibility of some sort. But I've not really been addressing how to get to that point in the first place. We've talked about how to be interviewed and certain questions that have been that are going to be raised and kind of how to get into those jobs in the first place and do a good job. But we've not talked about the first thing that you do every time, and that's put your CV in, right? And the CV side of things is a difficult thing because I know full well that everybody has their own way of doing it. Depending on who you ask for advice, you go and get all kinds of different things. You go to something like a job centre or a career development centre, and they will, depending on which person you speak to, almost uniformly give you a different opinion from each member of staff. And so it doesn't help you at all. And so today I've got 10 points that address the specifics. Yeah, the things that when I was doing interviewing, and regardless of which job I was in, which company I was working for, and all of the other people that I've worked with in regards to both clients and people that I've had to work with through other companies and through other organisations. Here are the 10 points that kind of highlight what you probably shouldn't be putting on your CV or resume, depending on what you want to call it. The first thing the kind of stands out is avoid things like personal stuff. Yeah, avoid telling them that you're a certain religion, a certain political affiliation, unless it's particularly prominent. If you're in this country and applying for a job with the Labour Party, suggesting that you're a card-carrying member of Labour, that's probably relevant. But it's not something necessarily to throw up right at the top of the CV with your name and with your address and your phone number and everything else, and your email and whatever. Make it, throw it somewhere down the bottom. Yeah, throw it in as something that's relevant, that it's there, that you've noted. But otherwise, things like your sexuality, yeah, no one cares. No, and no one can call you on it, at least in regards to the majority of the Western world, where they have kind of equality acts of various sorts, anti-discrimination acts of various sorts. No one is going to care about whether or not you are a card-carrying, Bible-thumping Christian, or if you happen to be a profound spiritualist or some kind of agnostic or whatever. They're not going to care about that kind of personal information. The same way that they're also not going to care about what your favourite food is. They just don't care. That kind of personal information has no place in taking up room on what should be a fairly kind of neat and tidy CV. The next thing, and this kind of bears mentioning separate from personal information, is your age. Don't put your age on it. Just straightforward, simple, easy. Don't put your age down at all. Yeah. Firstly, it will only ever do you kind of a harm, just because people are going to instantly think, oh well, they're this age, which means that they're this type of person. Don't give them the opportunity to draw those conclusions. There was one occasion which I actually felt really annoyed about. Which I hadn't put my age down on my CV, and then it was my age that cost me a job, and I could have gone and kicked off about that and complained about it and all the rest of it. Firstly, that wouldn't have done me any good in the first place, but secondly, imagine, I at the very least I got in to do the interview. Imagine what would have happened if they had seen my age on the CV in the first place. I wouldn't have even have got the interview. I wouldn't even have got the opportunity. There wouldn't have been the chance for me to come in and do enough to make me more worth hiring than someone else. The next thing is images. Don't put your face on the bloody CV. No one cares about what you look like. Don't give them the opportunity to care about what you look like. The only exceptions might be if you're going for kind of, I don't know, an entertainer position, an actor, something like that. But even then, I would imagine that would be a casting call that you would respond to rather than throwing your CV in. So, go and remove all of those images, logos, pictures, images of your face, whatever. Take them off your CV. They take up space, and no one cares. In fact, more often than not, if there's just a random picture on a CV, they're going to judge you by what you look like before they even look at the information there. Because that's what humans do. That's why Tinder is such a successful thing, like we've spoken about once already this week, and how it causes all manner of other impacts. Don't give them the opportunity, take the pictures away. And now the next thing, and this is incredibly important, because there are numerous reports from all over the place that point out just how prevalent this is as a problem. I have interviewed people who have done this, and they have never got the job, and they will never get the job if they are found out, and that is lying. Don't put a lie down on your CV. You can try and spin stuff in a positive way. You can omit some of the negatives from your work history, because you're only supposed to be putting in the positives there. You're supposed to be highlighting the best possible you for the job that you are putting yourself forward for. But don't just plainly lie. You'll get found out eventually. Even if you get the job first, you'll get found out, and someone is going to kick you in the teeth for it. It might take a while, but it's going to happen. And the longer it takes to happen, the worse it's going to be for you when it does. Any interviewer that's worth their salt is going to turn around, see what's on your CV, and grill you on it. When they grill you on it, if it's not true, you're going to crack. They're going to find out. It's not hard to pull out the gaps and the inaccuracies in someone's CV. So don't lie. You can put things in a positive light when ordinarily they would have been a bit mundane. Make things sound a little more exciting than they were, maybe. But if you're just plainly saying that you've done something that you never have, you've got qualifications that you don't, whatever else, don't put it on there. It's just not worth the hassle. The next thing is something that I've seen a few times and is bizarre. I don't know why anyone would do this, but they do. So I'm going to say it. And that is, don't put the reasons why you've left your last few jobs or on your CV, especially if they're like, I've been fired because they caught me stealing. Don't put it down. Just don't. Why would you put something like that? I was caught stealing and they told me off for it and they sacked me. Okay, why the hell are you applying to this job in the first place? We don't want someone that steals from us. It's one of those situations where it's like, why would you put that down? But people do. So I'm saying right now, don't. All they need to know is what you did in that job. Each section that says the job title and the period of which you worked, the list of duties and things and responsibilities underneath should be very straightforward, and that's all that there should be. There shouldn't be anything else. Including, next point, don't put anyone else's personal information on there. Not your boss's name, not their address, not their phone number, anything like that. If you're going to put your references somewhere, put references as on request at the bottom. But in many instances, that isn't even necessary. If they want references from you, they'll probably give you a form to fill out so that they have the information right there to then go and find these people themselves for the references that they want. They're not going to ask for the references right then and there on your CV. They shouldn't be there on your CV. That's someone else's information. The only person's information that should be on your CV or resume should be your own, no one else's. Okay, so now that we've got through the majority of that stuff before we start talking about the things that people care about most on a CV and what you should put in regards to those, or shouldn't put in regards to those, I suppose. Let's talk about formatting. Firstly, use the same format throughout the whole thing, because if you don't, my God, does it get confusing to read, and it looks unprofessional, and people get sick of it. Make sure that all of your bullet points line up. Make sure all your paragraphs line up. Make sure that everything looks normal and the same. Don't don't use a tiny font. Use normal kind of 11 or 12 12-point font in Word. With use something like Calibri or Arial as your font of use, or your font of choice. Don't use things like Times New Roman anymore. It's a bit outdated now. It's not the default setting for Windows and Microsoft Word processor anymore. Arial is, I believe, the default off the top of my head. So use that instead, because it's just very plain text for people that's easy for people to read. Don't double space lines or anything like that. Just make sure that it's legible and it all lines up in the same way. So the next thing is when it comes to the order of stuff to put on your CV, I would always say work comes first. Because in regards to your qualifications, in regards to your hobbies or interests or anything else that you're going to put on there, the work is what they care about you doing, and that's what they want to see first. The one thing that they don't want to see, though, is irrelevant work. So if there's a job that you've got on your CV that isn't relevant to the job that you're applying for, granted, if it's the only job you've ever had, then probably it's a good idea to leave it there. But if you've already got a reasonable work history and you've got 3 jobs in the same industry as the one that you're applying for, and 2 jobs that are completely separate, completely different industries and whatever else, especially if they're old from like 10, 15 years ago, whatever else, then don't add them. Tailor your CV to the job you're applying for, the job that you want. Next thing, a lot of people, especially people who are coming out of university, put an awful lot of stock in their grades, and they will put down all of their grades. They will put down not just which subjects they studied, but and which qualifications they have attained. They will also say, oh, well, I got an A at GCSE, I got an A at A level, and I got a 2-1 at university at degree level, and then I went on and got a merit in this and a distinction in that. No one cares. Did you pass or fail? You passed. Great. Then potentially you have the skills that we're looking for. In which case you go on the maybe pile. That's all they care about. In which case, firstly, your qualifications should not be at the top of your CV because they have no bearing on the work that you will be doing. And secondly, when it comes to actually having them below, just list what you've done. Just list the qualifications that you have. Don't go off into kind of weird... these are all the grade averages that I had, these are all the predicted grades that I had, these are all the grades that I achieved. I've seen that. It's ridiculous. No one cares. Even Google as a company have literally turned around, and in one of their business reports, I think it was 2-3 years ago, they said very specifically that there is no correlation between the GPAs and the grades attained throughout schooling and university and the propensity for people to work. There is a reason why there are many of you out there, I'm sure, who have had a university graduate come in fresh from uni, take over a job as your boss, and then being completely incompetent and incapable of doing the job. The grades don't mean anything. In which case, it's important that they know what you're qualified in. It's not important that they know that you were in the top 5% of your class or the bottom 5% of your class. No one cares. Don't waste their time putting it in. On my personal CV, I have one small section that says, these are what I gained in school, these are my qualifications outside of school, and here are some additional qualifications that I've just picked up along the way. And so as a result, there are 3 paragraph length sections, bullet pointed out, that just let people know where my specialities are in terms of training and in terms of what I've done in the past as far as education is concerned. That's all they need to know. Most jobs, especially entry-level jobs, will look and be like, can you speak English to a to an expected level and do maths to an expected level. They will look, if it says yes you can, they go great. Everything else that's in that section in regards to those qualifications that you've listed there so lovingly will be ignored. I'm sorry to tell you this, but that's the case. I would say that interests are probably worth keeping to a minimum as well, but I've seen people get jobs just off their interests before. Just the fact that they had added one line that said one specific thing, and their interviewer has picked up on it and gone, oh wow, that's actually kind of what we're looking for. You might not have done it professionally before, but if you're doing it in this environment, come and do it for us as well, and we'll actually pay you for it. So it's keeping the interests on there is maybe a reasonable idea, but just keep it to a small section. Again, most of your CV, which by the way should again only be about 2 pages long at most of that should be your work. Most of that should be stuff that you've done in terms of actual work that you've either been paid for, or even if you weren't paid for it, was voluntary work that was run in the same way as a proper business. And then the last thing that I've got to say is avoid opinions. You can have an opinion of yourself saying that you're, say, confident, or that you did well, or whatever else. But if you can't back it up with something substantial when you're questioned on it, then it's not worth you putting that down in the first place. I can personally say that I'm confident and a capable leader because of stuff that I've done in the past, the way that I manage things. And I could give examples of ways in which my skills were tested that then improved my confidence, improved and developed my my leadership style and my adherence to kind of best practice. And so as a result, when I'm questioned on that, that's not so much an opinion of the fact that I am a confident, capable leader, as I have a list of things that demonstrate the fact that I am a confident and capable leader when it comes to it. If you want to say that you have great communication skills, that's absolutely fine. But unless you've got evidence for it, that's an opinion, not a fact. Make sure that even if you're putting down these things on your CV and not expanding on them there, because obviously if you've got a personal profile at the top of your CV, or if you're adding this into a covering letter, then you might not have the space to go and expand on how wonderful you are. But if you're going to put something in there, make sure that you've got facts to back it up, because if you don't, then on examination you're going to crumble and you're not going to get that job. You're not going to get into that interview, past that phone screening maybe even. So these are the 10 things that that I would definitely either be wary of, or at least or at the very most remove entirely from your CV, and the order in which I'd put your CV as well, and the formatting and whatever else that I've mentioned throughout this video. Again, there are a couple of things here. The way that I'm talking about putting your CV forward is mostly in terms of kind of the UK standard, but there are a lot of similarities between kind of UK standard and US standard in various ways. Employers, regardless of where they are, they're all interested in the same thing. They want to know what you can do for them, what you've done in the past, and how they can use that. They don't care about anything else. So I understand that certain things, for instance, personal profiles and stuff, some of the other bits of information that I probably wouldn't mind just leaving in, are more negatively received in certain places around the world. But again, for the most part, as long as you've got all of that information that they do care about in there, your work history, the specifics of the things that you've done, and you're not wasting their time with expansive sections about just how wonderful you are, lists and lists of your bloody qualifications that no one gives a shit about when it comes to the job that you're doing. It's one of those things that stands out. When you've got people who I've worked with who have had PhDs and who even now are still not doing the job that they qualified in, and are still doing essentially entry-level jobs because they want to make such a big deal out of their qualifications when no one cares. Yeah? Make sure that your focus is on what the employer wants to see, not on what you want to show them, because you want to show them far more than they care about, and wasting their time is not something that is going to endear you to them at all. But anyway, guys, as said, those are the list of things that I would kind of tailor in your CV or your resume. I hope it's helpful. But otherwise, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video later. Take care.